Images and imagery is also a form of language. And as you walk down the aisles of a bookstore or a library and you see all of the book covers that are just begging you for your attention, calling you out, saying, pick me up, see what's inside of me, you understand the art form that goes into making a book cover. On today's episode of Punk Right, stick around to figure out how do you actually judge a book cover? Or judge a book by its cover? Or both? Stick around. I've been working with graphics and graphic design and design programs for about the last 14 years, and I've really come to understand and appreciate the art that goes into the creation of beautiful graphics. I also pride myself on the fact that all of the art and the graphics that you see on the Punk Right website and for these videos I've been able to do. This in turn has given me a lot of appreciation for the beauty of book covers and book cover design. Book covers are a nice tell of the package that you're going to get. When you pick it up, it's the outside that invites you to open up the book and look at what's on the inside. And there are certain elements that go into making an effective book cover, not just in terms of the message that's being portrayed, but also in the actual design and layout of the book cover you're looking at. But beware, not all book covers are created equal. What then is the criteria that you can use in order to judge the effectiveness of a book cover? Today we're going to talk about three criteria or three elements. The first is a simple generalized element of composition which can be applied to all artistic visuals. We're going to look at layers and depth. And finally, the effectiveness of the message or the theme as it's represented in the book cover. Elements of composition are certain artistic elements that can be applied to any kind of visual arts. And there are some basic ones that are kind of ubiquitous in their application to book covers as well. The different thing with a book cover is that you're looking at a certain dimension that you have to work with. You've got the front cover and the back, which sometimes correspond, and then you have the spine as a connecting intermediary. And it's fun to see how those designers put those together because they all kind of have their own qualities. Some of the basic elements of composition you're going to find are rules of third, which is basically the arrangement in terms of the frame of the page or the book cover. You have color schemes, you've got lines and other kind of framings, and of course different typographies that are really going to bring out the title or the author in the front cover of the book. The second criteria that I mentioned before deals with depth and layers. And one of the challenges in graphic design is that you're always dealing with a two-dimensional page, and those pages are flat. And the objective is to take the viewer from a distance and suck them into the page or into the design so that you can get some sort of dimensionality or depth and give the perspective of three-dimensional design. The last element of design, which is a subtleness that good designers know how to bring forth, is how do you represent some of the main story elements or the thematic elements of the book within the graphics of the book cover itself. Sometimes you can do that with written descriptions and typography, but I think the most effective and most interesting book covers will have those integrated into those visually. Similarly, you're going to get certain aspects of tone and mood that are inherent in those design color schemes, but also how they put the images together, so you get a sense or a feel of what you're getting into when you look at the book. It's really a fantastic skill for those designers who can do it well. Alright, so let's get started. The first one I want to look at is by Neal Shusterman, and this book cover is for the book Unwind. I love this book cover for a couple of reasons. What you're going to see is an overlay of the rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds is a very strong compositional way to think about how you want to put dominant elements on the book cover. What I see first, of course, is the hand. And the hand is mysterious, it's ghost-like, and it's laid in a place so that it's the first thing that attracts my eye to the book. That hand has an extension to the arm which takes me right down to the title, and the title or the typography is also very effectively done because of the way that it's used the letters to create this image or a ghost-like image of transparency. They've taken that and they've put a similar type of text which looks kind of like jumbled lines at the very top of the graphic, and that is an interesting compositional technique because it creates what is called a frame, and it keeps me inside the top border so that I have to see and be confined to what they want me to see, which is the image of the hand and that very light overlay or transparency of the fingerprint. They've used a contrasting font to look at Neal Shusterman's name come out very strong, so it attracts my attention and attracts my eye as well. In terms of the balance of that spread, it is very comfortable to look at. There aren't too many contrasting colors that really distracts me, and it gives me a very good impression of what I'm going to be getting into when I look at this book. I want you to understand how they use these transparencies to create a couple of different layers of depth inside that book cover. A very eerie, transparent figure in the background holding up his or her hand, or its hand, depending on what's been unwound. And that creates a beautiful sense that sucks me right into that book cover. I love it. I love it. Lastly is the theme of what they're portraying. This image for me is very spooky. It's like a ghost, and the book itself, kind of a dark book. This book cover gives that perfect dimensionality so that I can understand the essence of this child that is still extant yet dead at the same time. And that is what the ghost-like imagery is portraying there in that front cover. If you read the book and then go back and look at the cover, you'll understand the value of what they're trying to achieve there. I'm going to stick with Neal Shusterman because whoever's doing his book designs are great. This publisher has a very good graphic designer who captures the essence of the stories themselves. Scythe, also kind of an eerie book, but there are some things that I love about the tone of this book cover that really gets at the tone of the book. Important to look at is the color scheme. You have these reds and these yellows that go together. They complement each other on the color spectrum. The typography is very clean and bold. There are no drop shadows, which is what the blade is representative, I believe. And so you have that nice juxtaposition of typography in terms of how it works within the future or future dystopian sense of the book. The figure in the middle is very clever. This looks very two-dimensional, but the reason they do that is because they want to create an illusion with the two faces. In this story, there are two protagonists. I wouldn't say they're opposing, even though they seem to be on opposite sides at times, but their personalities conflict and their positions in the society are conflictual. With the face of the figure in the middle, opposite of that is another face that is the illusion of looking at the other one face to face. It's very subtle, but you can see the eyelash of one, which is implying a female, and there's no eyelash on the other, which implies that it's a male, and indeed those are representative of the characters of the book. This is extremely well done. It's very clever, and if you were to see these with the other two books in the series, you can see how they've created a very consistent motif or design elements that work with different color schemes, yet they work together just fantastically. In terms of tone and mood, one novel that really stands out in terms of its book cover design is a nice little book by Marcus Sedgwick. He's a British author, and the name of the book is Revolver. And there are some very impressionable images on here. The one, of course, that draws your attention first is this beautiful framing around the title here, and this is the gun trigger. Now, behind that, they've created a beautiful layer and depth with these dark blues and this icy blue, as the ice is also an important element to the story. And you have this impression of the villain, a very evil, conniving looking man, and it's very effective because the tone of the book is very dark, and as I pick up this book cover, it gives me that impression of darkness, and I know what to expect when I get into this. As I searched the internet for a couple of PDF book covers, I saw that there were also some other different published book covers for Revolver. But what I found interesting is that all of them maintain pretty much the same color scheme with the blue and the black, even though some of the images are different. But again, those tones and understanding thematics of how the colors interact with your interpretation of the book are important in terms of the graphic design. It is a nice little book called Rash, and this deals with a boy, of course, who's in northern Canada and deals with polar bears. And the cool thing about this, of course, is the composition is well done, and you have a very dominant figure here right in the rule of third, and you have this portrayal of this image of the polar bear right behind it, and that gives a good impression of what the story is about. I find the perspective quite interesting as well. You're looking at top down, so it really draws you right into the book. A book called Baby by Joseph Moniger, and this is a graphic portrayal, but they've also used some gradient effect here to kind of create a little bit of darkness here to really highlight the typography at the bottom of Baby. You're not always going to get that, of course. Generally, you're going to see a a bit more stoic representation of emotion when you deal with literature. There's Cormac McCarthy's The Road. You can see that it's very mundane. They don't want to draw your attention because they want these types of books to speak for themselves. So don't be turned off so much by literary books. It's just part of what they're trying to sell to the audience you're trying to sell it to. And lastly, I just wanted to mention programs like Photoshop and InDesign have done for the evolution of book covers, the art of book covers. Because again, you're selling a package, and the package is an impression of what to expect when you lay down $25, particularly for a hardcover book. If you look at some of the older science fiction genres, particularly, this book was published in, I think, 1984. The graphic representation is a painting, and you're confined to what you could do in terms of impressions outside of these digital programs. Now it's time to share a few things that are just my pet peeves that I don't really find attractive. But if I look at this book cover, the thing that turns me off is that it looks like a movie poster. You know, I don't want to go watch a movie poster. I want something a little bit more dynamic and something that is intrinsically related to book and book culture and genre culture. If you want to go see a movie, go buy a movie poster. This one drives me a bit nuts. The Secret Life of Maeve Lee Kwong. Chinese girl goes and lives in Hong Kong. That does not look like a Chinese girl. I'm sorry for the disconnect, but you missed something in translation. Also, the picture is kind of weird. By the way, these are not judgments on the authors. They're more judgments on the publishers who choose to put these things together. All's fair in love, war, and high school. Okay, it's a nice graphic, I can give you that. The problem with this, though, is that this graphic looks like it's very young adult, too young adult, not for a high school kid. This is a little bit of a misrepresentation of what's actually going on in the book in terms of the graphic on the front cover. Doesn't get my vote. Whew, here we go. I'll give them some kudos for having a similar motif in terms of the colors. The Photoshop work is terrible. The hair cut out, the way that they've created the layering, it just doesn't produce any jealousy. It's just kind of lousy. The other thing that really drives me crazy, when I pick up a piece of fiction, I want to imagine my own world. And when I see these characters on the front page, it basically implants what I'm supposed to see. Same with this one. You know, you just have to throw in the characters as you see them, not as I see them. That stuff really irks me. People spend a lot of time putting their books together. When it comes down to it, you just make your own decision about what you like in a book cover. And if you're gonna design your own or have someone do it for a piece of work that you're working on, make sure that it's something that you feel like best represents the work that you have put into it. That's it for today on Punk Right. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you got a little bit of insight into graphic design principles and how they apply to making effective book covers. If you like the content, feel free to subscribe or hit the like button or share the link, whatever. Meanwhile, just keep writing, Punk Right.